So hey anime fans. The series name is What If Naruto Married with Vampire? So let's start the series. The only reason Naruto had survived thus far was because she had the support of the headmaster. Now that the only person who could truly appreciate her was no longer with her, she was alone. The third headmaster had been a loving grandfather figure to her, allowing her to stay in his home after she had been cast out into the streets. The orphanage and the citizens didn't want her, but third headmaster Sarutobi did. He was the only thing that remained in her life, and even though some of the other villagers didn't hate her, he was the only one who loved her. As she gazed at her father's motionless body on the floor, she realized that he was dead and that she would soon be as well. The preteen approached her father slowly and collapsed on his body, and the echoes soon attracted unfriendly attention. Because of the actions of one member of the race, many others who lived in relative peace began to hate Kitsuns, believing that they were evil and that the child was the cause of his death. This hatred was fueled by the absurdity of hate and sneered at by the onlookers. One of the ninjas exclaimed, "Kill the demon child!" Another was defended by saying, "She was on the body of the headmaster when he died." Naruto just ignored the crowd and gazed at her father figure in shock. In her mind, Sarutobi was the closest thing to an immortal and a constant figure that would be in her life, even though he was elderly. Her image, despite her stupidity, was the only thing keeping her from breaking. The accusations and hateful sneers only made the broken girl question herself and wonder if they were correct. The little girl's mind shouted in protest, knowing that it wasn't her fault, that blasted Danzo's. But who would believe her when she held her arms across her head in an attempt to protect herself from the incoming kicks and stabs? All of the shouting abruptly ceased, and she was in a different location. She was worried about her father's whereabouts, and her mind was racing with questions as she took in the abrupt change in the landscape. The location was a strangely damp and gloomy sewer, with busted leaks and streams of water gushing out. Naruto got up and started walking after deciding to find a way out, but she hadn't gone very far before the constant sound of pouring water made her feel very depressed. It was as if all of her emotions were etched into this terrible spot. An echoing voice said, "Finally come to see your warden, have you, Jinchuriki?" "Who's there?" Naruto inquired, startled. "No one's told you yet, child? I am the great Kyubi. You are the pathetic human jailing me." The one ninja she admired was the one who implanted the very thing that destroyed her life. The one person she believed didn't keep secrets from her was the one who lied to her entire life. And as she realized the reasons, her mind began to quickly connect the dots. All of the senseless hate began to make sense, and some of the theories she had made about her life that she had dismissed as foolish became true. The Kyubi desperately sought to say, "Okay, kid, don't cry. Don't cry," instead. The truth was that his container was broken right now, and although many would assume he could use this to his advantage, he truly couldn't. The fox needed hate and rage to escape, and for him, petty emotions like sorrow and pain were not something he could muster to escape. At this point, his survival instincts kicked in, and he would even lose his pride and help a human. The fox didn't know how to comfort a human before, but he was definitely trying his best. "Where's the hard-headed brat I knew before? Come on, don't break on me now," urged he. The girl kept staring ahead of her in agony, and Kyubi knew that being in her mindscape was only making her feel worse at the moment. The fox understood that a Jinchuriki's mindscape was a defense mechanism that they used to warn their tailed beasts of impending danger. Since the girl appeared to be too far away for him to try to bring her back, he did the only thing he could think of. For once, the fox exclaimed without his trademark taunts, "I can take you away! I can take you away from all your pain!" For a brief moment, Naruto looked up with a glimmer of hope, but that hope quickly gave way to suspicion because she knew there was no reason for the fox to assist her, Sarutobi had mentioned the Kyubi as a creature without the malice in his voice. Everything she knew about the fox was negative. Even the insults directed at her were always interpreted by the young children as equating her with that demon. The demon fox was aware of her thoughts. He had become used to it from his numerous encounters with his Jinchurikis. They could never fully trust a heartless demon, and that was one of the things about Jinchurikis that he found acceptable. They weren't stupid enough to blindly trust everyone, and as a result of their experiences, they trusted even less than the most cautious person. Tell me, child, what more do you have to live for here? Can you escape their clutches all by yourself with the limited training from Sarutobi and the even more mediocre training from the academy? I am the only way, the Kyubi said. The Jinchuriki croaked in an unsuccessful attempt to yell. Do not play with me, demon! Just because I have lost my heart does not mean I will lose my dignity and fall into your trap. I may be called an idiot, but I sure as hell am not dumb. Listen, child. Your mind is on the verge of breaking, and this distrust is going to break it even more. I can give you hope. Hope is the only thing that can stabilize us right now. The fox growled in frustration because he knew exactly what his container was thinking. Kyubi chose to ignore the completely absurd idea from his jailer and play along with it so he could escape this alive. Nerdu did not understand what Kyubi was trying to tell her, but she did recognize the creeping urgency in his voice. He was afraid, almost as if he was afraid for her. He snarled, We do not have much time. Nerdu decided to accept her fate because the fox was not playing with her. She had nowhere to go in the real world, and nothing could be worse than being by herself. Even if the fox were to kill her or switch roles, at least she would have someone to talk to who wouldn't be hostile. What do I have to do? Kyubi, was this meant to happen? Damn it! Your mother altered the seal without me knowing. How did she even do that? Now is not the time. I feel like I'm being stabbed, for God's sake. If Kyubi hadn't felt his core energy being taken, he would have been relieved that his container had found some other kind of disturbance to divert her attention from her father's death. Nerdu was flung into an unknown dimension as she felt her insides topple painfully. The physical pain was so intense that for a moment she even forgot about her life and what had just happened. This isn't good. Calm down, Nerdu. Focus your core energy into your tenketsu and release as much as you possibly can, the fox said. It wasn't as simple as it seemed, but Nerdu chose to focus and release her mental link. She ignored the excruciating stabs at her body and directed all of her core energy into her tenketsu, noticing that she had a strange core energy in her body that seemed to be coming in waves. After a painful minute of concentration, she finally let her core energy burst out of her system. Having helped his amnesic daughter Yuki and integrating vampires into a human school, as well as making a vampire hunter protect vampires, Kyan Cross had witnessed some pretty unbelievable things in his lifetime. However, he did not anticipate seeing a girl appear out of nowhere in his office. He quickly concealed a weapon in his clothing and ran to the girl to catch her, noting that she appeared to be in pain and somewhat younger than Yuki at the time. Her bright blonde hair and nearly flawless skin would be the most noticeable feature if it weren't for her fox ears. The headmaster was curious, so he decided to check to see if it was real or just a little girl's eccentricities. To his surprise, it wasn't a fake. Slowly, the girl's eyes opened and revealed the brightest blue orbs that man has ever seen. If Kyan claimed to be surprised, he would be lying because he ended up guessing correctly and seeing a pair of slitted blue eyes. However, Nerdu was suffering from a terrible hangover when he spoke to the fox. Kyubi, what the devil? What was that? Nerdu shouted to herself. The fox said, Now I don't want you to freak out, but I need to tell you something. Too slowly. What gives me the impression that I won't enjoy this? Nerdu, who was psychologically spent, asked. This might take some time, so don't interrupt. First of all, when I said I could get you away, we are now away. To be true, I wanted to take us to another country, but I did not expect the sealed change. We are now in another dimension. What? Didn't I just tell you not to interrupt? That isn't the worst of our problems now because it seemed your body took in my core energy. Now that would be normal if it wasn't for the fact that you were forced to release your core energy, or risk overloading your tenketsu. The fox hesitated, unsure of how to give the news to his Jinchuriki, which might cause her to plunge into despair once more. Kyubi finally made the decision to do so after a few moments of tense silence. Don't freak out after hearing this, and it isn't as bad as it seems. Stop being slow and tell me. You have become a kitsune. The fox sensed the cause of his container's distress and couldn't help but feel some sympathy. To Nerda, this was everything she hated. She didn't want to be the very thing that everyone hated. She had worked so hard to be called anything other than fox child or evil kitsune her entire life, and now she was that very thing. The Kyubi had been expecting a scream of terror or an explanation, but instead she saw a shocked expression followed by silence. I wish I could help you more, and I am sorry for causing you pain, but you need to go now. I cannot keep you in your mindscape forever. Let us pray that whoever found you was a kind man. Kyan saw the young girl wake up with a sob and a choke. Her clothes were filthy, and blood was dripping from several wounds. If she appeared so upset, whatever had happened to her was probably bad. Her blurred eyes quickly scanned her surroundings as if she had been trained to be perceptive her entire life. Kyan wondered if she had received the same training as vampire hunters because all of her body language suggested it. The man in front of her had a silly smile but almost threatening appearance, so Nerda quickly pulled herself up only to realize she didn't have the strength. She felt the fox ears twitch backwards in fear as she cursed how it gave away her emotions. As she glanced around the room, noting her position and any potential causes of harm, she didn't calm down when all she saw was a normally odd-looking room. My name is Kyan Cross, now what's your name, little lady? Nerda blinked at his query, and he asked for her name out of all the things he could ask. Since this man was either reliable or someone she didn't want to meet, Nerda chose to phrase her sentences carefully. Nerda stammered, My name is Nerda Uzumaki. And she unconsciously winced. She silently cursed that subtle gesture that revealed so much about her. She didn't mean to flinch, but she usually received sneers, insults, or spat on when she introduced herself. She always called herself Nerdu instead of Nerda, as Sarutobi called her, and her thoughts turned to her father figure, threatening to burst into tears. Kyan saw the broken expression on her face and chose to change the topic until she was ready. Tell you what, why don't we go into the kitchen and I can make you a hot chocolate? She couldn't understand why he hadn't reprimanded her and bombarded her with questions by now, so Nerda nodded but couldn't help but look suspiciously at the man who seemed to notice her emotions fairly well. He seemed too hyper and happy to be trustworthy, and she wondered if he was just stupid or eccentric. Kyan, on the other hand, was putting on his typical happy facade, which he found seemed to make people lower their guard, but it didn't seem to be working for this child. The headmaster wondered what this child had gone through to make her distrust him so much. Nerda realized it was nighttime as she made her way down the many hallways. Her senses were so sharp at the moment that she could see far more clearly than she had ever seen in her life, which only made her gloomy when she realized she was now a kitsune. As Kyan explained that he was the headmaster of this school, Nerda tried to pretend to listen by nodding her head, but the memories of Sarutobi kept coming back to her. The headmaster's almost casual tone made the girl envious, but she couldn't help but notice the seriousness that was underneath it. When they finally arrived at the teacher's lounge, Nerda sat down on one of the coziest couches she had ever seen. Her thoughts were consumed by the third headmaster and everything he had done for her, including rescuing her from the streets, protecting her, and giving her the best chance at a normal life as much as possible. Despite the fact that she was despised by her classmates, and that everyone else viewed her with disdain and hatred, he looked at her with love. This time, though, she was unable to cry because she didn't see the point. Finally raising the topic, Kyan said, "Would you mind telling me how you got here?" She was secretly grateful that he wasn't acting all happy when he asked her the question because she couldn't bring herself to stutter and cry in front of a cheerful man. However, the abrupt change in demeanor raised the suspicion she was beginning to lose around the foolish man. Nerda looked at the strangely dressed man and saw how serious he was. Although many believed that Kyan was an insensitive jerk, he wasn't when it came to the death of loved ones. Even though he knew when he shouldn't act the way he did most of the time, Kyan was aware of the seriousness of the situation and had observed that Nerda's eyes were as dead as Zero's eyes after his family died. The girl answered, "You won't believe me. I have seen things that many people would say came from fairy tales. You can tell me and I will believe you." Nerda nodded. Since the child hadn't asked him questions about the school or vampires and had pretended that almost everything about this school, including the night class, was strange, the headmaster knew that the child wasn't a spy for some evil vampire family. Given the real fox ears and the fluffy tail waving behind her, the man could only conclude that this child was something completely different. "I am not from this dimension, that is why you haven't recognized me." For a moment, Kyan remained motionless as he processed this new information. He had never seen anything like this before. "May I ask why it is that you ended up in this situation?" For a few seconds, the girl remained still as memories of his passing consumed her thoughts as she attempted to compose a statement that would encapsulate what had just transpired. It was then that she mustered the meager bravery to acknowledge the words that had characterized her whole existence. "I'm a kitsune." Kyan blinked. She said it as if she would be hit if she brought it up. He assumed that being a kitsune in the area where she was raised must have been terrible, but he had no idea why that was so terrible. Based on his understanding of kitsunes in mythology, the Japanese versions had depicted them as divine messengers. When Nerda saw that he didn't understand, she recalled that she was no longer in Konoha, where kitsunes were supposedly despised. Perhaps she wondered what the man thought of her. "I am sorry you don't understand. A kitsune is a demon fox, but I wasn't originally one. I asked the great demon Lord Sealed in me to send me away because, well, I was going to get hurt, and something wrong happened with the seal and I ended up here." Kyan sighed and gave the child a slight smile, even though he didn't really understand what she was saying. He had a peculiar knack of figuring out when people were lying, after all. "I don't know why you kitsunes are hated other than maybe the fact that you are demons, but I don't see anything wrong with you. I believe you, so I guess this means you can stay here with my 2 children as long as you want. If you want, you can stay here or we can try to find you a way back home." Nerda stared at the man as if he were insane, and she couldn't fathom how a man she had just met would allow a strange girl like her to live in his house on their first day together. She also couldn't comprehend how a man could believe anything as unbelievable as her story. The child appeared perplexed, but who wasn't after they had first met the man? The headmaster knew the child was harmless, but he couldn't be totally unprepared because he didn't know anything about her species in general. He knew that if they were so despised, there had to be a reason, but for the time being he would let the child be a child and perhaps introduce her to his lovely daughter. After a few months, I had met the daughter and new son of Cross Sands. Yuki and Zero were both about a year older than me, and I think I liked Yuki better because she was kind, but Zero couldn't help but make me think of myself because we had the same eyes. Yuki, who sat opposite from me, was always telling me how wonderful the night classes were. I suppose she had a great deal of regard for them, even though I couldn't see any particularly striking faces. "Are you listening to me?" Once I become a middle school student, I can finally become a prefect. Was my standard response. Hey, Nuda-san, why do you keep that hat on all the time? Yuki said. I muttered, it's because I have, terrible hair? I gulped as the older girl gave me a curious look. I tried to think of her as mature because she was a few months older than me, but she didn't drop the topic, and I could see that childlike, innocent curiosity radiating off of her. I kept this hat on because I didn't need to constantly focus on my head because a genjutsu on my tail was difficult enough to maintain, and Kurama wouldn't stop berating me about how, being a kitsune, I should be naturally skilled at illusions. Come on, Nuda-san, your hair can't be that bad! I kept my hat on and quickly slapped her hand away when I saw her hand suddenly reach out to take it off. Yuki's sullen expression changed to one of apology, and I thanked the fox for my quick reflexes and remembered that I wouldn't have needed it without him. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do something you didn't want me to. I spoke the words, "Yes, you did, don't ever do it again," in a frightening tone before I walked away. I made the decision to enter the headmaster's quarters where I currently reside. I would only be given a dorm room once I officially began attending this institution. My favorite spot was in the bookshelf corner between the couches. The sensation of being in a corner without being noticed was always pleasant. The entire school was spacious and opulent. I had come to realize that Gothic architecture wasn't common, but this location had it. I found the architecture to be much more stunning, making Konoha appear like a plaything. Why did you have to be so harsh to the human? It is unlike you, Kurama, as I gradually learned, asked me. She would simply try to remove it from me again if I wasn't there. If she knew it was forbidden, she shouldn't go there. Kit, I want you to move on from these humans and help me train you. I don't mean to offend Kurama-san, but I'd prefer not to resemble a kitsune more. That is actually offensive. You are my fellow kin now, and that makes you higher than those humans. Why won't you embrace your real self and become powerful? Since there is no threat here, what's the point? These individuals are all regular people who are incapable of doing jutsu. There is never a world where humans don't hate and harm each other, Kit. I can sense the hate in these human hearts as well, and they are just like the ones back in Konoha. Nurture their evil and merge it with the advanced technology here, and you can get warfare just as tough as jutsu. I nodded in agreement with his logic, and I could sense the same kinds of emotions he was comparing. However, I was aware that there was more to the smells I occasionally got from here. They smelled like blood, which kept me vigilant despite the fact that these people were not familiar with jutsu. The blood smell was particularly strong close to the night class, and there was clearly something fishy going on there. It excited me in an odd way, but I chose to ignore it. You are right, Kit. I can smell them from here, and they don't smell anything like humans do. They have the scent of another kind of being, but they also carry the beautiful scent of blood you shinobis used to. I trembled when I smelled the blood. It was such a lovely scent that I wanted to chopping something up just for the joy of it. I hissed and soon got rid of that repulsive feeling. What made you bring up blood? I want to have it spilled on me, don't you know that? When it happens, it is the greatest feeling ever. I wish every day that I could go outside and kill a Nara deer or hunt a wild boar. Those were the good days. Stop, Kurama-san, please. You are causing me to have terrible cravings. I cursed because Kurama was driving me crazy and I couldn't break the mental connection unless we both wanted to. I could hear the humor in his voice as he continued to entice me. But you know what? Human flesh tastes the best out of all of them. I'm warning you, QB! Stop now before something goes wrong. That feeling of your teeth sinking into their flesh, crushing their bones, it's the most ecstatic feeling of them all. I saw pictures of me biting into Yuki's skin and devouring her in front of Kaien, the beautiful pain, the intoxication of blood, flesh, and wrath, and the primitive drive, formed by the inherent instinct to kill, nearly overpowered me as I struggled to contain myself. I wonder what I was thinking. When the door opened and I saw Kyan approaching me, I began to breathe much more forcefully as I resisted the impulse to jump at his throat. My entire body wanted to eat him, but my mind held me still, so I quickly did the only thing that came to mind to quell my bloodlust. I bit me. Naruto, what are you doing? I felt Kyan's arms cling to my shoulders as he gazed at me anxiously, and I wondered why there was no fear in those eyes. I sank into his chest and took deep breaths into his chest, feeling both relieved and tempted at the same time. I couldn't believe I had almost eaten a helpless man, that I wanted to eat someone just to feel their suffering. I was terrified. She was slowly calming down and relaxing when I gave her a tight hug and patted her back. I could recognize that face anywhere. It was that of a hungry predator, and it almost made me think of a vampire in his savage anger. Perhaps that was why she was despised at home. Why? She exclaimed. Because I know it's in your nature and you can't help it. People like you who tried to hold it back shouldn't be feared or hated because you didn't choose to be born this way. Although I was aware that I had given too much away, she needed it, and I detested the way broken children looked. They were supposed to be like Yuki and have contented, carefree lives, but Naruto had the appearance of someone who had seen adversity and had to mature sooner. She was also older than her years, which pained me. It was not something you would or should show a child during the days when they were allowed to be innocent, and I detested the idea that any child would have the time of their life taken away from them. I had to grow up in a similar situation as well. I came from a hunter family and had grown up seeing vampires and death. There are others like me as well, aren't they? Is it those night class students? I stared at her in disbelief, wondering how she had discovered it so quickly. It wasn't as though I provided enough hints to make their differences clear. How about we talk about this after you get bandaged and I clean the floor? The blonde girl nodded, so I helped her up. We hurried to the first aid kit, and I began suturing her up. Her facial expressions kept shifting, almost as if she was talking to herself. She sent me a few guilty looks before pretending she never had them. I knew she was hiding something from me, but I couldn't figure it out. After a while, she growled at a non-existent person and blushed at me when she realized she had done it externally. Do you want to tell me what's going in your head? I'm sorry I didn't tell you this earlier. Well, go on. You know how I mentioned the demons sealed inside of me. I acted confidently as I recalled. Well, I do remember it from an earlier conversation. Well, he can talk to me and he always manages to get me riled up. I would have been able to fight of the bloodlust if you hadn't walked into the room. The last thing I wanted to happen this early was to alert the Hunters Association to her presence. But if they knew about another possible threat, they wouldn't risk having her out like the vampires. She was an easy target because she was only one kitsune and didn't have many powerful people supporting her like the vampires. I guess it was a bad decision to keep her away from the vampires, but my cheerful expression didn't turn sullen as I looked at her with a cheeky grin. Follow me, Naruto, there are some people I want to introduce you to. But it's night, the girl murmured feebly. Precisely why it's the perfect time to go. We are going to visit the night class students. What are they exactly? Are they like me? You'll just have to find out. You're so cute when you pout, Naruto-chan. The girl frowned at my antics, but who didn't? Naruto quickly pulled off her long black-sleeved jumper to cover her wound. We walked to the night class dorms while I educated her on manners and the common usage of honorifics and name-calling in our society. I tried to be as happy as I could and tried to distract her from something that I knew was upsetting her. She was trying to hide how uncomfortable she was feeling here, and it wouldn't have been apparent if I hadn't had a good eye. When I eventually arrived to the dorm, I found the majority of the class in the lounge. The vampires' heads turned swiftly, as if they sensed something about Nerda that I couldn't. With a joyful wave, I remarked, "Hello, students." Kanem said, "Greetings, Kyan-san, what brings you here?" It wasn't a feat to laugh at, she must be very brave, because I saw the sudden change in her demeanor as she caught herself and stood up tall and unafraid. I smiled brightly and pointed at Nerda, who seemed to shy away. I suppose the suspicious glares from the night class students and their red eye from the reflection were a little intimidating. "This is Nerda-chan. I adopted her just a few weeks ago. Isn't she just adorable?" "Yes, I had received the news that you adopted someone. Is there a reason for you bringing her here?" replied Kanem. With a smile, Ado asked, "Oh, is she a vampire?" "Oh, I wouldn't say that, but Nerda here is something similar." I could see by the girl's shocked expression that she didn't realize I was going to reveal her secret to them, either that or that she was shocked that they were vampires. I knew she would be upset, but what fun would it be to tell her first? Later, the face she made would make the suffering worthwhile. Nerda questioned, "Wait. Are you sure?" "Yes, Nerda-chan, you can trust them." Before removing her hat and untangling her tail from her waist, the girl appeared to glance suspiciously at the group's quiet members. I was amused by the numerous shocked looks that were evident on some of them, and seemed to be suppressing their emotions on others, and I couldn't help but smile mischievously. Takuma, unable to conceal his disbelief, exclaimed, "What exactly is she?" Then I waved goodbye. "Well, it wouldn't be right for me to introduce Nerda-chan all by myself, is it? I think I'll let Nerda-chan do that," I answered. "Hey!" I could hear Nerda's loud outcry. All of their expressions brightened my day, even though I knew she would beat me later for what I had done to her. It appeared that Kyan was merely playing me to get me in here to meet them. I would make sure to remember to give the immature man a good reprimand for doing this to me, but for the time being it seemed like I would have to explain myself. The night class members in front of me appeared to not want to ask me twice to explain myself. I sighed and resigned. I muttered, Where do I start?" I deadpanned. "Maybe from the beginning," in my mind. "Well, you see, I'm a kitsune and I guess you are vampires," I replied weakly. The entire group gave me a less than impressed look, but I didn't really care what they thought. "And as to why you don't know of our existence, it's because we don't exist in this dimension." I only hoped I wasn't remembered as the crazy girl who rivaled the headmaster's lunacy. The entire class was now staring at me incredulously. I couldn't blame them, but it was annoying to explain something that seemed so unrealistic. "I do not tolerate anybody making fun of us, and mostly Kanami-sama," said Ado. "I'm not making fun of you, nor am I doing this because I want to. If I had it my way, I would have just kept it to myself and Kyan-san. Just listen to my story and you might understand, and for proof I could do a move I learned back at home," the Kanem figure said. "Let her continue." I turned my focus away from the pack leader and chose to tell my narrative without coming out as weak or genuinely pitiful. I nodded a little thank you to him, happy that they all seemed to respect and listen to him. "When I was just a child, the leader of our village, the headmaster, sealed the demon lord into me. After I was thrown out by the orphanage, I was taken in by the current headmaster, who wanted to train me in the role of a Jinchuriki. You see, there are 9 great-tailed beasts, and I held the most powerful beast, the Kyubi no Yoko. I was known as a Jinchuriki, otherwise translated as human sacrifice, and my job was to keep the demon in and use its power for the village." I hesitated for a while, since I didn't want to share the news of third headmaster's death with some new acquaintances. They all appeared to be quite nervous about me, but I wouldn't expect any less. Well, I trained with the headmaster for a few years and was about to be introduced into the shinobi ranks when he was assassinated. The villagers could never see past the demon in me and tried to put the blame on my bad luck. I was about to be publicly executed when I entered my mindscape and made a deal with the Kyubi to escape. We could not contemplate how my special seal would affect a jutsu used in me, and I ended up breaking through space and time. It wasn't like I wanted to be watched suspiciously, but it was a lot better than being pampered, so I was really delighted when I noticed that no one had tried to coddle me or give me pity looks. The ringleader inquired, "What does being a Jinchuriki entail?" Well, I can use foxfire, and because of my previous training I am well versed in what you call martial arts. The Kyubi has given me enhanced senses, these features and illusion techniques. A blond man with well-groomed hair said, "Why don't you show them to us, Naruto-chan?" I nodded and performed a standard foxfire technique. A few fireballs began to form in front of me, and due to the heat, I forced them to change into different colors. I then swiftly merged myself into the shadows. I could perform these actions naturally without training, as I had discovered only a week ago. There were obviously many of these things I could train on, but I had consistently turned Kurama down because the fox is usually a bitch. I had a mental image of Kurama growling, "I can hear your thoughts, you know?" When I was done, I paused and watched with anticipation. They didn't appear to know what to do quite as well as I did. So what exactly can vampires do? The remainder of the day passed as the majority of the night class students left after I demonstrated my abilities. I met Kenaim Kuran, who I discovered to be a pure blood, and Ado, who didn't seem to trust me at all. However, I did start to get along with Takuma because he didn't seem to be as dark as the other vampires. Over time, he also introduced me to these strange comics called manga. "So why exactly do you read this?" I responded. He questioned me. "For the fun of it, don't you have a hobby?" "Well, I used to train." "That isn't a hobby, Naruto-chan, that's work. I really need to get you into manga." I nodded and made an effort to remain composed. The blood odor was overwhelming, and Kurama kept asking me to kill in my mind. All I wanted was to leave this place. "You'll eventually get the hang of ignoring the smell, Kit. For now, eat one of those vampires. I've never tasted one of them before," the voice of the fox in my thoughts said. "Yes, but it's making me crazy right now. Can we please stop discussing eating people?" I shot back. "Hey, how are you feeling?" Takuma-san inquired. "The fact is, I'm going crazy from the blood odor here, and Kyubi keeps talking about murdering something. Let's say you don't have any rabbits in the field for me to hunt, do you?" I asked, feeling irritated with myself. Takuma laughed when I asked, so I suppose that wasn't a question that people asked casually around here. I knew that vampires consumed human blood, so it would be absurd to ask for animals to hunt. "I don't think so, but we have some blood pills." Even though I wondered what humans tasted like, I smacked myself out of my bloodlust condition and determined that I would much rather sink my fangs into a rabbit right now. I could tolerate hunting animals, but I was able to maintain my composure while almost blanching. "A rabbit would be perfect at this moment," I complained. "I could ask the chairman if he could release some of those poor cuties out there for you," said Takuma. I remarked, "That would be great since I was dreaming of hunting them on a field since the day I came here. I bet you Konoha would have been a much more satisfying place to hunt," feeling far less ashamed of myself than I had a few weeks prior. "What is Konoha like? You didn't tell us much about it. Oh my dismay," Takuma inquired. "The place is always so full of life, and it's one of the elemental country's strongest shinobi villages. Recently, though, the place has changed from what I had learned from in history. I have some clues of what will happen after Sarutobi's death, But it isn't good, that bastard of a man will probably take his mantle, I said with a snarling voice and the hatred my bloodstream. I'm sorry for bringing up some bad memories, Ndachan. I did not mean for it to hurt you. Takuma apologized. My smile brightened as I said, It's fine. There's no use for me to think of that hellhole anymore. I have no chance of getting back and I'd rather not. I'd much rather focus on my new life here. To the blonde-haired, green-eyed figure. I spent the remainder of the night with Takuma before deciding that, with all the manga being thrown at me, I would much rather go home. This place was nice, though, much nicer than Konoha. The people here didn't make fun of me, sneer at me, or insult me like it was their only option, even though I wasn't sure how to deal with these vampires. They all seemed a little too evil and dark, apart from Takuma, and I didn't get a positive vibe from them. Kurama reminded them. That's because they eat humans, Kit. Correction, I believe we are at least one step lower than them because we eat humans and animals, while they only drink human blood. What's the matter with things that are inherent to us? Don't foxes hunt rabbits and bears eat fish? Why is eating people any different? I said. Remember, I was a human. I don't think I can imagine eating a species that I had once been. Better throw away that mentality, Kit, or you might end up in a ditch by the people you refuse to eat. Enjoy the hunt while you can. I snorted and ignored him, saying that I would not listen to anything that fox said because I was never going to eat a human in my life. I entered my new home and saw Zero, who was always wearing a sneer. I nodded hello to him and decided to begin reading the manga that Takuma had given me. Shortly after Yuki entered, I chose to ignore her and resume reading the book, which seemed to be quite dull. Why don't any of you speak? Wouldn't you like to build a campfire and share spooky tales? Yuki whimpered. I snorted. When you're literally living among one, why would you need terrifying stories? I made a joke about being a demon kitsune. Are you aware of the vampires? Yuki inquired, waking up. When I realized I wasn't going to tell them what I meant, I was almost ready to correct them. This, however, seemed to also grab Zero's attention and confirmed my theory that Zero had previously encountered vampires. Based on what I knew about him, he was quiet, detested night class students, had terrible nightmares at night that only Yuki could help with, and was extremely sensitive about what the chairman always said to him. With as much feeling as a zombie, I quipped. Yep, I met them today. They don't seem too bad, but you better be careful, Yuki, or they could bite. When I realized that they took that seriously, I was about to snort. Didn't anyone get that I was making a joke? I was just joking, Yuki. It seems they have blood pills or whatever to keep them in check anyway, I assured her. Zero eventually spoke up, saying, I wouldn't count on it. Those pills can't cure their real hunger. I thought about what he said and concluded that pills only somewhat satisfied his needs, since I could sense the anger in his voice when he said vampire, and could only guess what they had done to him to make him hate them so much. Well, why aren't they able to have only a piece of the blood banks? I asked unexpectedly. It must have not given the same feeling of pleasure to drink from a bottle as it does from a living human being. I felt the thoughts of sinking my teeth into their necks and ripping their jugular veins out of their necks, and I felt my teeth lengthen and my hunger rise within me. It actually felt like I was going a week without real food. The last time I hunted, I killed a small mouse quickly, and it felt great, but I was sick afterward. The two siblings looked at me as if I was crazy. Like I said, Kit, you better start eating. A kitsune can only last a certain time before they want to rip their way into the human heart and devour it. I tried to ignore my hunger and maintain a straight face around my newly adopted siblings. They looked so lovely, so I had to leave before I got out of hand. I was aware of the kitsune myths, which described them as creatures that pretended to be attractive men and women in order to lure their victims before tearing their hearts out and devouring them. I quickly got up, put the book down, and snorted because the fox inside of me really wanted it, but I knew I couldn't have it. I think I should get to bed, although there are only 3 hours till morning. Before running to my room and snarling in hunger, I hurried out of the room at a normal pace. How much longer could I endure before I had to repeat that heinous act? I would definitely need to tell the headmaster to toss some rabbits in so I could hunt them. Nerda, are you hungry? I grumbled as I turned around and spotted Kyan. Why does he always enter when I'm trying to escape from people or when I'm starving? Would you kindly let me hunt some rabbits or something? I said, gasping in between sentences. I growled when the man smiled sadly at me and pulled out a cage with a rabbit in it. Why did he feel sorry for me? I didn't like the way he looked at me. It seemed like he was hoping for a different option when he knew there wasn't one. Either I starve myself or I give in and hunt something. I'll release it outside for you. I nodded and huffed before orienting myself. The idea of a hunt approaching was alluring. I wanted to just jump the rabbit in the cage and do it right away. We eventually made it outside before the headmaster glanced at me and let go of the rabbit. I put all of my thoughts aside and concentrated on my predatory instincts, feeling my body change into that of a fox before the rush of power, hate, and bloodlust left me speechless. When I saw Kyan looking down on me, I almost choked. I wondered if he was disgusted, and he probably didn't think of me the same anymore. He handed me the cloth, but his eyes remained the same. I found myself again, with bloodied hands and a face surrounded by the lovely scent of pain and death. It was awesome yet revolting, quenching yet barren, everything great and horrible put together. I muttered, "Thank you," before erasing my embarrassment. I shuddered after taking one brief glance at the formerly adorable tiny rabbit. I could still picture the sensation of tearing off its legs and killing it slowly. I choked as I considered the manner in which I had murdered the unfortunate animal. Headmaster Kyan could never replace Sarutobi. Although he would always hold a special place in my heart, he would never be able to fill the void left by the death of the third headmaster. I saw him as a man who tried to give me a life and a father figure, someone who pulled me out of the darkness that loneliness brought into life. I got up and walked back the house with Kyan, who really couldn't help but act awkwardly while trying to comfort me. I was grateful, but I still couldn't see him the way I saw Sarutobi. Zero sprang across my path as I was making my way to the door. I was taken aback, but I also had no idea what was going to happen. Kyan, on the other hand, was taken aback because he was staring at Zero as if he knew what was about to happen. "Why did you enter this house with a vampire?" Zero questioned the man. I was shocked to find out. Did he witness me doing that? How did he know I was a beast? The headmaster defended. "Zero, she isn't a vampire." "I won't work, I can smell the blood on her, and I won't live with that person, so don't lie to me the way you lied to Yuki," he snarled. I was a little shocked when I recalled the same phrases being used about me during my time at the orphanage. I recalled the chilly showers, the unjust penalties, and the humiliation. I quickly put on my typical icy mask before glaring at Zero. I growled at him before making my way to my room and shutting the door. "It doesn't matter what you think, Zero, because this isn't your house to decide what happens in it, but if you want me to leave so desperately, I will," I said. "What made you do it? Do you not realize what a creature such as she may do to Yuki in her sleep?" Zero shouted. I groaned. "She is not a vampire." "Don't lie to me," Zero growled. I became impatient and demanded, "Are you going to drop this subject and apologize to Nerda-chan or not?" I sighed once again because it didn't seem like Zero would be saying sorry to Nerda. His remarks must have reminded her of unpleasant memories, and I couldn't show it on the outside, so I immediately put on a foolish smile and entered the house. "Why don't you come down, Nerda-chan?" I called from the lower level. I was surprised to see Nuda descend. She didn't seem like the type of child who would listen to their elders, and even though it was obvious that she didn't want to, her expression didn't show it. I questioned how much she had been made to follow orders, and from what I've heard, her military training may have contributed to her obedient behavior. "What's the matter?" In her typically austere tone, she inquired. With a naive smile, I said, "Why don't you show Zero here that you're not a vampire?" "Why?" she begged. "Don't force me to reveal my secret to a boy I only met a few weeks ago." Zero grunted and said, "I'm older than you," which only made Nuda sneer. "As your cherished father, I'm not forcing you to be Nuda-chan. I'm just requesting that you show your siblings some affection." Melodramatically, I sobbed. After gradually shattering my heart, Nuda whispered to herself, asking, before her face became a little irritated, "You aren't my father, by the way," she added. I gave Nuda-chan my puppy dog looks and shed my crocodile tears during a few tense moments of quiet. I could watch her slowly crumble under my sweetness. The kitsune mocked the white-haired kid, saying, "Okay, fine, but this is only because you have given me a home, and it's not because I want to prove something to you." When she revealed who she really was, Zero's normally stoic expression seemed to crack as a hint of fear and self-hatred traveled to her features. She removed her hat and untangled her tail. Zero snorted and waited for whatever was going to happen. I knew he suspected her of being just another vampire, but I couldn't wait to see his face. The fact that she wasn't a vampire gave her the benefit of the doubt, but that didn't alter the fact that she wasn't human. I didn't anticipate seeing a pair of fox ears and tail as evidence, but it did happen. "What are you exactly?" I inquired, still wary. With regret, she murmured, "I am a kitsune, a demon fox." "Are you dangerous to people?" I inquired, recalling why I was also so opposed to vampires. "With that expressionless visage I observed on many vampires," Nuda remarked. "See, I won't be accepted here. There is nowhere in the universe I can go that can accept someone like me." "You aren't leaving Nuda-chan. This is actually the only place in this world that can truly accept you. This is the only school where both vampires and humans can coincide," Cross replied to my dismay. I grunted and left it behind. I was okay as long as she wasn't one of those noble-blooded vampires, but I felt uneasy knowing that Yuki could be harmed by someone other than me. "Don't do anything to Yuki and I will be fine," I said. Nuda nodded without saying anything more, so I exited and quietly closed my room door. The only thing left to do was look up information about kitsunes and their true nature. As I searched on my laptop, I discovered that although they were depicted in a variety of ways, the majority of them were crafty tricksters. Because people typically conjecture, there was typically one truth to the mythology with occasional flaws, and I knew that the kitsune myth would be no different. If they were real, there would undoubtedly have to be more truth to one side of the myth than the other. I was interrupted from my research when the door knocked. Since we had stayed up all night, I thought Kyan would go tell us to go to bed, but he didn't. I was a little taken aback when Nuda entered, and I snarled at her, unable to conceal my dislike for anything that might endanger my new family members. "Look, I know you're a vampire of sorts too, and I don't understand why you hate me if you are one as well." "How are you aware?" I scowled and expressly instructed Headmaster Cross to keep it a secret. "I know because the demon inside of me told me of your smell, which I seemed to miss out on because I thought you were a normal child. But I just came to tell you that I will definitely not harm any of the students in this school and I will not harm Yuki. This is a promise," I stated with my hand extended. I had made a promise to myself that when I grew up and reached level E, I would kill myself and protect Yuki. I knew I would control my bloodlust, and for some reason, I knew Nuda could too. However, she seemed almost certain that I couldn't help but pull out my hand in trust. By the demon inside of you, what do you mean? I saw the delay and the mixed feelings behind her eyes, and I pondered whether it was anything awful, like how I was demeaning, that she didn't want to talk about. I was originally a human, but when I was born, my village leader sealed the demon Lord the Kyubi no Yoko in my stomach. I can converse with the nine-tailed fox. I agreed, wondering why someone would imprison a demon lord in a baby of all things. This made me more receptive to the idea that there might be other kitsunes and demon lords out there causing chaos and tearing apart lives. There aren't any other kitsunes, if you were wondering. It's just me and the Kyubi, and pray to God that he isn't released upon this world lest you want to die young, sardonically replied the girl. Don't expect me to trust you because of this, though, I growled. I never did, she said with a sorrowful smile. I grinned at Yuki as the gates opened and yawned as I walked outside with the night class. It appeared that she was unable to stop the fangirls who had suddenly formed a line, the majority of whom were obviously for Ado. I crossed over with Ken to assist the fallen Yuki because I never really trusted the brunette vampire, and I could almost feel his dark and enigmatic aura radiating off of him. I didn't like things I couldn't fully understand, and he was one of them. His intentions toward my Yuki-chan were something I couldn't yet accept. When he helped Yuki up, I gave him an unconscious scowl, and when Zero took hold of his hands and drew it away from her, I felt a little relieved. He said, "Don't touch her," Ken remarked. "Scary, don't worry, Mr. Disciplinary Comedy. I had no intention of harming her," before leaving. "Yuki-chan, I think you should be careful around that guy." "I don't trust him," I replied softly. "But I trust you, Nuda-sen, and you're a vampire," I said. "Don't worry about it, I need to go now." And then I waved my siblings off. I was a little disappointed that I couldn't attend regular classes with humans, but I was a demon and nocturnal, so I would much rather spend my night running in a forest killing a poor animal than sit in class and learn about the history of vampires. Unfortunately, Kyan decided that I looked beautiful enough and that, given my beast pedigree, I could cut the fit. I sat in class completely uninterested in listening to the teacher, and the smell of blood filled the night class dorms almost constantly. Kyan had instructed the class and the teachers to keep my secrets so that I could live the rest of my life free, which I appreciated. The only thing I had learned in class was how dangerous it was for my existence to be known. If the vampire world and the Hunters Association knew of this, they wouldn't be letting me free. After all, I was a minority group of one. Unfortunately, it was well known that the rabbits in the field were there for me to kill whenever I felt hungry. It was humiliating to hunt rabbits like a wild animal every day, but the Kyubi didn't think so. In fact, he had a superiority complex. Humans and any other living thing with a heart large enough to tear out of its chest were on the menu, while vampires only had to live with the sight of humans, while I had to live with almost every living thing large enough to tear to pieces. The only person I could truly call a friend was Takuma. He seemed extremely different from the other vampires. Although the other vampires made me change, he seemed trustworthy, therefore it didn't matter because I understood exactly what our actual nature was. Since the teachers and students were all paid to keep quiet, it didn't matter if they saw me. As long as the council out there didn't know that I existed, I was okay. Outside of class, I was just a normal, human female. To be honest, the only benefit of attending night classes was that I could let my tail and my ears hang out without worrying. I couldn't resist falling asleep, and when I woke up, I noticed the ruler had fallen behind me. It seemed like I had fallen asleep. How could a teacher be so dull that they could put a nocturnal student to sleep at night? "Mrs. Cross, if you can't stay awake at night, I suggest you attend the day class," he said. "That is a common misconception, sir. You see, I am nocturnal," I replied. "Then would you at least behave that way?" he sighed and asked. I nodded. I found it difficult to stay up most mornings and nights, and Yuki and Zero would usually wake me up for dinner and other activities, which was now my breakfast. With all the classes going on, I was never able to go hunting, and I was extremely thirsty at the moment. The only pleasure I experienced was sleeping, but mostly because the teacher was so dull. I found myself wishing I were Danzo's mindless pawn for a moment because the history of vampires was so dull. There were a few wars, followed by politics, group politics, and more damn politics. At least those mindless pawns didn't have to understand vampire politics. When the class was finally over, I yawned and stretched. I said, "No, I want deer this time, no more rabbits," as I visualized myself in a zoo. Asterisk. I was rushing through a zoo with tigers, giraffes, people, and other creatures who were all ready to have their hearts torn out when the dream suddenly cut to me stirring their hearts in a bowl of ramen. Why hadn't I considered it earlier? Nerda! I slurped my tiger heart from the bowl, ignoring the sudden cry. No, I wanted a wolf heart now, as QB had always claimed that wolves fought fiercely. Nerda! Nare! The scene abruptly changed as I woke up. I was back in the classroom rather than the zoo, and I realized I had been drooling. I wiped away the drool as soon as I could and looked up to see Takuma. "Takuma, why'd you have to wake me up?" I responded. He chuckled and remarked, "You were mumbling something about deer, ramen, and wolves." That was really awkward, and I had the self-respect to become red while turning my head away. I grinned and remarked, "So class has ended? I should go meet Yuki." He said to me, "Yeah, but you seem a bit too tired, are you okay?" "Yeah, I just feel like ripping something to shreds, but at the same time I don't. It's disgusting to have to take out the blood every time, you know," I responded. "Not really, you could take the blood tablet," he replied. I answered, "No thanks, I have some chicken hearts for lunch," and pulled out a container of raw chicken bones. When I ate the organ, the majority of the night class students still blanched. I never understood why they had to eat a living, breathing human for lunch, but at least mine was dead when I tore out its heart, and fortunately I hadn't done it to a human. Yet, Kurama inserted in my thoughts. As I consumed the disappointing heart, I snarled back at him, "I'm not eating a human, Kurama!" For once, I wanted the thrilling rush of killing my victim, but it tasted awful. Perhaps I could live in Africa and have an unending supply of lions? "You know, I just had a dream of eating my hearts with ramen. It looked tasty, you know, but I doubt it will taste the same with blood all over it," I said. Takuma responded, "I'm sure, Nuda-chan, just make sure you don't spill it," as she stood up to go. Ado appeared irritated with Zero today, which was not surprising given Zero's behavior toward Kan-Aim. The vampire had always been protective of Kan-Aim, which always made me laugh. Of course, Ichiju Takuma was also a devoted follower of Kan-Aim, but he was simply too kind to be like the others. As he scrawled his drawings, he snarled, "Who does that human think he is anyway? Touching dorm president's hand like that?" In her monotone, Ruka Sawan mocked, "This looks like the doodles of someone who's in love," after removing the notebook from his grasp. To my chagrin, Ado screamed, "Please, I could destroy that disciplinary committee any second." When Shiki responded, "Yes, and they do have that girl, she looks quite yummy," I sprang up and slammed my palms on the desk. As my bloodlust increased, I growled, "Don't even consider touching a hair on Yuki-chan's body. I will personally tear you apart myself." After eating the remaining hearts in disgust, I took a few breath mints and headed home. As I stepped outside, I noticed Yuki on night patrol. She gave me a glance and sighed. "You know you aren't meant to be here," she replied. "But when has that ever stopped me?" I responded. she shot back. I'm supposed to be on patrol to keep you safe. Yeah, but I'm stronger than you, so maybe I should be the one doing the protecting? I think what you're meant to be saying is that you're protecting the day class students, right? I said. I know you aren't a danger to them, Naruto-san, but some of the others may be, she remarked gently. I know, I responded, lowering my cap a little more. Since Yuki was his first adopted child, it seemed that Cross-san was a little too protective of her. Yuki's eyes were always drawn to my hat, and she had no idea that I was a kitsune. In fact, she was the only person I knew in this entire place who was unaware of my identity. Yuki believed that I was a vampire, and I only knew the night class and Zero. No human or other vampire should ever see my ears or tail. Cross-san always insisted that I keep my secret above all else. I could see in his eyes that he was afraid of what would happen next, and I shared his fear. Deep down, I knew that someone would discover who I really was. I remarked, I'm going home, as I walked away from my older yet somehow younger sister. The bloodlust threatened to take over until I smelled Zero pass by. The red haze vanished from my view as I was left feeling embarrassed that I had even considered doing that to Yuki. Zero narrowed his eyes at me as he noticed what I had almost given in to, and I quickly walked past him. I allowed myself to indulge in the constant beats that Yuki's heart produced. I hurried over to Yuki after witnessing the fleeting moment of bloodlust seep into Nuda's eyes. I could not let her harm Yuki because I had witnessed how she had abused those animals, taking pleasure in torturing them slowly until they died. I couldn't say much for myself, but I knew I had enough self-control to prevent the need from taking over, and as long as Yuki doesn't do something foolish and suffer harm, I won't feel the need. You should be careful around Nuda, I responded. Come on, Zero, she's our sister. She may be a vampire, but she is still our sister, Yuki said. Nothing, in my perspective, could be worse than a vampire, so I knew she couldn't have been worse than one. Based on what I'd seen, a kitsune was still on par with a vampire, so I didn't have any faith in her at all. Yes, but her primal urge deep down inside is to kill you, I replied. I could tell that Yuki frowned at me because she didn't like it when I was different from Nuda. I was the complete opposite of Yuki in that I had no faith in the world of night animals, and now it had no hope of regaining it. I'll be patrolling another section for now. Make sure there aren't any girls trying to sneak into the night class. Before she could say anything, I vanished. I followed Nuda, and when I finally caught up to her, I saw that she was walking with her hands in her pockets. Her blonde hair was flowing behind her in smooth waves, and although her body was stunning, I knew that it was only a ploy to attract her prey, just like the vampires did. Kitsune's was all about deceit, so I never trusted her. She mockingly questioned, Why follow me, Zero-san? Do you think I'm going to eat a day class student? I wouldn't be surprised if you did. She turned around with a look of rage radiating from her, and I saw her eyes turn crimson as her pupils dilated into slits. She gave a little growl before exhaling and massaging her temples. I have never eaten a human and I never will, no matter how much you don't believe it. Do you think I enjoy having to restrain myself? So then why do you keep tempting me to kill you? She snapped up. My normal monotone. It's not personal, but I don't trust you. Since when did anybody? The villagers didn't trust me, my own dad didn't trust me, and no one here trusts me. I don't care if you do or not because the one person I do trust is myself, she said quietly. I scowled when she said that the headmaster and Yuki trusted her, and it was this trust that worried me. Even though I couldn't assume anything about Nuda because she wasn't exactly a species I was familiar with, I couldn't help but think that she might be even more dangerous than a vampire because I couldn't tell. I saw the way you looked at Yuki. And what you don't. I was tempted to bite into her every day, but I trusted my willpower and stopped when I noticed that her blood did smell sweet, like the subtle scent of roses and everything good. Wait, roses, why could I smell roses? Nuda was also observing the direction from which Yuki's blood originated. I hurried forward as I marveled at Nuda's skillful ascent of a tree and his leaps along its branches. When I got to Yuki, I noticed Hanabusa Ado and Akatsuki Kane standing menacingly around her. I squinted at them and pulled out my revolver, while Nuda leaped down from the branch and aimed her kunais at the two lads. Nuda snarled menacingly. Get away from Yuki-chan. Geez, we were only licking a bit from her arm. It was not like we bit into her or something, stated Ado. If you touch another hair on her, then I'll blast you, I said. The two retreated, wiping out the memory of the two terrified human girls. Nuda embraced Yuki, and I had to restrain myself from pushing her away. I approached Yuki and gave her a worried look. Gosh, Yuki, don't ever fight vampires again, leave it to me, okay? Nuda said. I don't think that is necessary. I am Yuki's partner, so she should come to me, I said. As she held the flushed Yuki to her chest, Nuda remarked, I'm sure Yuki-chan likes me more, don't you, Yuki-chan? The kitsune cheekily remarked, See, even Yuki-chan said she likes me more. HN, was my response. She snarled, Damn it, you're like a Sasuke clone. Who's Sasuke? Yuki inquired inquisitively. This time, she smiled sorrowfully as she said, Just a guy I used to know a long time ago. I wanted to know where she used to live, so I asked Kyan, but he never really answered. All he said was that she didn't have a nice upbringing and that it was unknown where she came from. She waved goodbye after saying, Well, I've got to take my leave. I have a physics test tomorrow that I refuse to fail. You never fail, though, Yuki remarked, rather irritated. After saying, I'm not the one with the prefect duties, maybe you should bring it up with Cross-san, she vanished. I responded to the unasked question Yuki was going to pose by saying, The headmaster will never let us jig prefect duties. When I entered the bathroom, Yuki was blow-drying her hair. She appeared surprised that I had just entered, but who wouldn't be? She shouted, Hey, you can't just barge in like that. It isn't my fault that this is the only bathroom available right now, I said. Don't get naked in front of a girl. Hey, you just thought it doesn't matter because she isn't a real girl, right? I scented her out of both disgust and want. Her blood did smell wonderful, and I felt bad for even considering it. She soon moved past her irritation before blow-drying her hair once more. I remarked, You still smell like blood. You know, according to the legends, I might just turn into one, she added incredulously. You know, 10 years ago I was attacked by one too. My blood might just be a bit too delicious for them. That just means I have to be a bit more careful. She continued, oblivious to my need. It was like fighting a roaring wave. You could push through it, but it would never fully end until the storm passed. I hurried into the shower and closed the door after glancing at her neck and feeling that primordial impulse take over for a moment. I whispered, Damn it, Yuki, don't come near me. This time, I recognized Nuda when I heard the door open. She must have sensed my desire for blood. She mocked, Come on, Yuki-chan, you little pervert, you should leave unless you want to peek on a naked Zero taking a shower. Yet I could sense the underlying concern in her voice. Yuki objected, I'm not a pervert, Nuda-san. Fortunately, Nuda had brought her out before I did, so I waited until I heard them both go before I collapsed onto the ground in relief. According to Takuma, everyone seems so excited today. No duh, they're a bunch of love-sick females. There's nothing worse than those turds that ruin the image of females all around the world, I said. Takuma questioned. You really hate them, don't you? Of course I do, they're giving females around the world a bad name, I said. I wonder how many chocolates I will get, so Akatsuki, what do you say? Do you want to wager on who will get the most? Ado responded. Shiki moaned. This is so annoying, as Takuma and I descended the steps. Takuma added, Don't worry, Shiki. I'm sure you'll get a lot of chocolate, in his customary warm tone. Ruka exclaimed joyfully, Lord Kaname! He smiled as he asked, Shall we proceed? We all left as I skipped behind Takuma. I greeted Yuki and then glared at Kaname as he said friendly, Hello? I believe the man had a terrible secret of some kind. The entire group halted when he stopped and turned around, and I only stopped because everyone else did. Kaname was the one guy I would never follow again because I failed to see what everyone found so admirable in him. He said, Hello, Zero, and walked away. With controlled rage, Zero remarked, I'll be waiting for you if you want a challenge. As he walked away, Kaname remained silent, and I worriedly watched my siblings because I didn't like the way they were acting toward Kaname. Yuki was too enamored, and Zero seemed like he wanted to bite the head off the pure blood. Before I left, I gave them one more anxious look in case one of my followers chose to harass me. The day class was packed with fanboys and females, but the female population was undoubtedly worse. To my chagrin, the next person said we had to get up early. I put on my white uniform and entered the lounge. Takuma greeted me, but I was running late, so I hurried up to the gates with the rest of the crew. I pulled down my hat and made sure no one could see my ear. The fangirls and boys were screamed at by Yuki. Everyone get in line! This was going to be a difficult day, I moaned. I was exhausted and drowsy, and all of these people were so enticing that I wanted to tear them to pieces. It didn't help that I was hungry and that a human heart looked so delicious at the moment. As Ado said with excitement, This is going to be so fun. Shiki mumbled, This is too troublesome. Can I just go and sleep the whole morning? I complained. I don't think you should do that, Nuda-chan. I'll bring you some chocolates, Takuma replied. Ruka angrily remarked, Ugh, look at all those fangirls sucking up to Lord Kaname. Tell me about it, I snarled, glancing at Takuma's supporters. Who did they think they were touching him like that? I felt like jumping at them and tearing them to pieces. I couldn't resist giving a little growl. Akatsuki cautioned, Be careful, Nuda and Ruka, you both look scary. Not as much as you, why don't you smile when they give you chocolates? Ruka responded. I resent the fact that I look scary. What reason would I have to look scary? I responded with rage. Ruka said, perspiring, You like Takuma, don't you? I questioned. Is it that noticeable? Yeah, it is, deadpanned Akatsuki. After giving Takuma another look, I shook my head. I had never heard of a kitsune and vampire relationship before, and it would be intriguing if I did. I wondered what a kitsune/vampire baby would look like. But wait, why was I already considering such a thing? In my mind, Kurama chirped. It's because it's in your nature, Kit. You want to get into his pants. I accidentally yelled, Shut it, furball! Aloud, and the majority of the vampires gave me strange looks. Fortunately, a random human decided to bring me some chocolate, which I accepted with delight and began to devour. Since I wasn't as concerned about appearance as the other vampires, eating chocolate wouldn't harm me. I'm hoping that today will continue to improve. I had nearly had enough of Takuma sitting next to me, humming as he read those pointless letters, and I had just jinxed myself this morning. Why hadn't I thought of cooking him a chocolate? The reason the class was empty was probably because I've only ever cooked ramen in my life. But it seems like Kaname didn't. He said, "Where did everyone go?" Takuma remarked. Right, no one's here. As though he had just realized. Kaname raised his voice and asked, "Where did they go, Takuma Nerda?" Takuma questioned, "Could we let this go?" I said, "They went to fight Zero." Just after Takuma attempted to step in for them. He said in pain, "Hey! Why did you do that, Nerda-chan?" I retorted sadistically, "I thought you deserved it because you kept reading those letters with an idiotic face." My gaze shifted from Takuma's crocodile tears to Kaname's icy manner. I could tell he didn't trust me because he didn't even know my origins, and happily, no one here ever brought it up. At last, Kaname questioned, "Why didn't you rush out to protect him?" I looked bored at my nails and said, "If it were Yuki, I would, but Zero is a big boy now and he has to face his own problems." In reality, I never thought of him as a brother. Instead, I saw him as a grumpy, hypocritical man who was a damn vampire who had the gall to tell the vampires and me to avoid Yuki because, for Kami's sake, he was even more unstable than us. Now that my mood was ruined and Takuma's cheerful humming was getting on my nerves, I looked at him with a great deal of annoyance. It appeared that he had forgotten about me and had resumed reading the notes in a cheerful tune. I had pretty much had enough of his ridiculously cheerful face, so I clicked my fingers, and Foxfire quickly devoured the entire stack of chocolates. He sobbed as he looked at his long-gone chocolates, which were now a heap of char, and wailed, "Why'd you do that, Nerda-chan?" "Your stupid face irritated me," I said, grinning malevolently. In all honesty, Takuma's foolish humming and cheesy smile really annoyed me. Why was he so delighted to receive sweets from other girls? I didn't feel guilty about throwing away chocolate for the first time in my life. Did I really like him that much? No, it was simply like any other foolish crush, isn't it? I haven't had any other stupid crushes yet, so I wouldn't know.